Casting is one of the most critical aspects of filmmaking. It's not just about whether or not the actor can deliver the lines well, but whether or not their interpretation of the character will fit into and even elevate the tone of the story. So when it came to Breaking Bad, Vince Gilligan and his writing team needed to craft a villain who could raise the stakes. Up until this point, they'd only put Walt and Jesse against unhinged cartel members and low-level dealers. But now they needed someone who could change the game. A professional who doesn't make emotional decisions, but who calmly calculates risk. He does everything correctly, so they need to meet his standards or risk elimination. The character is so well written that many actors could have done the job. However, most would probably fall into the trap of overplaying it, being a little too charming, too smooth, or too charismatic. Whereas Giancarlo Esposito understood the assignment. Gus Fring needed to be understated and calm, the type of person who could seamlessly blend into the background until he was pulled into focus.
But my instinct was to play against a stereotype. Make this guy someone who observed more than he spoke. That's why the silences that become in between the lines that I say are so penetrating.
But despite playing someone so stoic and emotionless, Esposito's actual personality is completely different. You could even call him larger than life.
Giancarlo Esposito! Giancarlo Esposito!
Giancarlo's mother was a singer and his father was a stagehand. He originally grew up in Italy, traveling around Europe until his family moved to New York. When his parents split, he decided to become an actor at just 8 years old, starting in Broadway. From there, he would pop up in all sorts of supporting roles, appearing in Sesame Street, Trading Places, Do the Right Thing, The Usual Suspects, and any number of TV spots, even sharing an episode of The Ghost Whisperer with his future co-star Aaron Paul. But the life of an actor is long and hard, and despite his numerous appearances, Esposito ran into such financial difficulty that he even considered hiring someone to kill him just so his family could receive a payout from his life insurance.
If I got somebody to knock me off, death through misadventure, they would get the insurance. I had 4 kids. I wanted them to have a life. Like, it was a hard moment in time. I literally thought of self-annihilation so that they could survive.
As shocking as this may sound, this mindset of a father willing to do crazy things so that his family would be left with some money after he died allowed him to connect with the themes of Breaking Bad in a way few others could. And it was now, at the age of 51, that he would get to play a villain so iconic that it would completely change the course of his career, earning him multiple Emmy nominations and a rightful place in television history. So let's take a deeper look at Giancarlo Esposito's interpretation of Gus Fring in both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul to examine the little nuances that made this performance so special. The first key is the physicality of the character. It's important to remember that while a TV character is technically written on the page, the energy the actor brings to the table then influences how they'll be written from that moment on. And Giancarlo undeniably brought a precise, professional, methodical quality to Gus Fring, to the point that we as viewers intuitively understand why he's as successful as he is just by witnessing him in action. And this isn't about the decisions he makes in the script, but how he carries himself. We'll start with how he walks. Gus never rushes. There's no arrogance or pep in his step. It's a methodical stride forward, step by step, which is exactly how he does everything in his business, just steadily progressing towards his goals like an unstoppable force of nature. Something else to note is how his hands dangle by his sides, making him feel almost robotic. His stance isn't physically imposing, but he doesn't have to be. He's protected, you know it and he knows it. The actor is choosing to do less here, which is why you never see him with his hands in his pockets or nervously scratching the back of his neck. He knows that the real power he possesses is all in his mind. He doesn't need to do anything but just sit and observe. This allows the viewer to think about the cards he's playing or the cards he's choosing not to play in any given moment. Another aspect I love about this performance is how he uses his hands. Notice how, when he's sitting across from someone with whom he's negotiating, he has his hands clasped together, conducting all the power in the scene as we can see he's the decision maker. But it also plays in other ways. When he puts his hands more flat on the table with someone who suspects he's done wrong, whether it's the cartel, Walt, or the authorities, it now takes on a different meaning. His body language is showing them that his hands are clean and he has nothing to hide. This isn't an accident. Giancarlo is aware of what he's doing with his hands and how that can add a layer of understanding for the viewer. For instance, when he's in the middle of his plot against Bolsa, notice how once he hangs up the phone, he intentionally keeps the phone in frame and starts turning it with his fingers. This lets us see the wheels of his mind turning, but it also communicates that his plan is still moving in the right direction, despite how the exchange we just heard might seem like the opposite. The writers also include lots of scenes where Gus is slowly unbuttoning his shirt or changing clothes. This serves a dual function. Firstly, it highlights Gus's public persona, and how the clothes he wears are essentially a costume he uses to control his image. As really there are two Guses, the civilian Gus and the criminal Gus. In the civilian version, the actor gets to showcase his customer service side, where he plays a robotically upbeat and polite professional in his daily business, but then has to simultaneously balance the dangers of his criminal life encroaching in the background, which he communicates by simply looking away, scanning the area, or just contemplating in silence as his fake smile slowly slips away. But these dressing scenes also highlight how methodical he is. Every task must be done right, even if it takes time. However, outside of these scenes that put such a heavy focus on it, Esposito consistently adds these little flourishes throughout the performance, where we see Gus unbuttoning and rebuttoning his suit jacket whenever he sits or stands. He has the decorum of a butler, but these movements communicate that the little details matter to him, to the point that we even see him subtly tuck his tie in with his hand when he sits so that it never makes contact with the table. It's all very systematic, and we can't forget that the last thing we ever see the character do is fix his tie, which it turns out was also the actor's suggestion.
And Vince says, "What might you be doing if this happened?" And I said, "Well, look, Gus is very proper. I close my jacket, when I stand up. I open it when I sit down." I said, "I would be straightening my tie."
The next key is the steadiness of the performance. Power comes in many forms, but there is something about the strong and silent type that's particularly unnerving, as you never know what he's thinking. But something Giancarlo maintains throughout both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul is the attention he gives to his scene partners. He doesn't look away or go inside himself. He absorbs them fully, inspecting their every move as if he's downloading data.
People get uncomfortable when you really, really take them in. When you drink them in completely, they feel as if a little bit intimidated by you.
So notice how, no matter the conflict, Gus just stares blankly at his opponent, saying as few words as possible as he figures them out. This gives the impression the other character is just speaking to a wall, and the longer he stays silent, the more flustered they become, revealing more of themselves in their emotional reactions and need to look away, while he remains this continuous steady presence. According to the actor, he practiced a lot of yoga while playing Gus, which helped him to think before he spoke, making every word feel more considered, which is why often instead of even speaking, he buys more time by simply exhaling as if he's finding calm in the storm. Or taking a breath before making peace with what's about to happen next.
Set up a meeting. Gail Bedeker's apartment. All right.
Often scenes just involve other characters revealing information while Gus listens. But even then, Esposito's reactions somehow tell us just as much as the character speaking. Remember, acting is reacting, and given Gus is such a stone-faced enigma, he basically trains us to look for the tiniest change in his expressions for insight into what's going on behind the mask. For example, just look at what happens when Walt is initially pitching himself to Gus. He describes Fring as cautious, and then states, "I believe we're alike in that way." And with just the slightest lowering of his brow, we can see Gus takes issue with it, visually preparing us for the pushback to come. And later in that episode, when he's telling him you can never trust a drug addict, notice how he subtly switches from his polite customer service face to a serious advisor by dropping his smile before he speaks. This makes it feel like sincere bespoke advice as opposed to a throwaway suggestion. Another well-conceived aspect of this performance is the eye work of Esposito, in the sense that even when Gus is thinking deeply, he never seems flustered. In comparison to other actors, his pupils move very few times as he processes new information. Whereas if they were bouncing around like Walt or Jesse, yes, it would show us he's thinking, but it would also feel more chaotic, like he's unsure what to do next and rooting around for ideas. Instead, these small trailing eye movements suggest we're still closely on course with this plan with just a few minor adjustments. All of this solidifies a sense of control, and by being more in control of himself, he's therefore more in control of his surroundings. Which leads into our final key, vocal delivery.
I start with a whisper. I first allow the words on the page to inspire me, and then I start to whisper the words and put them together. And in the whisper comes the voice.
Given the character says as few words as possible, this means that when he does actually speak, his words need to have maximum impact. And Esposito does a great job of keeping his delivery understated while still sounding intimidating. There are traditionally two types of villains, chaotic and controlled. Chaotic tend to be loud, proud, and unpredictable, whereas controlled villains are slow and considered. You probably don't need to guess which category Fring falls into, but Giancarlo's raspy, graveled voice adds a dark texture to the character's intentions. He can go from the friendly voice of customer service to sounding like he's burying you with his words.
A dog who bites every owner he's had.
And just notice the unique rhythm of his speech patterns. He speaks slowly, practically punctuating each word, which allows the actor to add weight to the most important syllables and season each word with a different spice. In this case, bites get some extra sizzle, whereas here he hammers on the word acceptable.
It is acceptable.
Allowing you to stew in each syllable. So if you wanted to do an impression of Gus Fring, it's all about breaking up sentences into shorter ones and then finding the right keyword to emphasize.
You paint a compelling picture.
And often when he emphasizes a word, he doesn't just do it vocally. He opens his mouth long and wide like he's taking a big bite out of it.
I will kill your infant daughter.
But even then, he's still steady and controlled. His mouth may be rabid, but his body remains contained. And aside from the one occasion where Gus is screaming so loud that spit is flying out of his mouth, typically each sentence is delivered in hauntingly hushed tones, which adds a layer of secrecy to the exchange as well as danger. As if he does decide to eliminate you, no one will ever even find out about it.
Never make the same mistake twice.
So after 3 decades of trying to succeed as an actor, Giancarlo Esposito finally entered the mainstream with his calm portrayal of Gus Fring, a man on a mission capable of making cutthroat business decisions in cold silence. And the character undeniably changed the feeling of the show, as the protagonists are now up against someone much smarter than them who's always 2 steps ahead. But let's face it, on paper this character is an evil cartel member who somehow hides his criminality behind a fast food chicken shop. There are so many interpretations of that role that would have come across as silly, cartoonish, or too mafioso. But somehow Esposito managed to get the tone just right, playing Gus like a meticulous professional who expects the same degree of excellence from his employees that he demands from himself. And it is important to remember that Gus only believably blends into the background, because even this performance isn't trying to stand out. It's quiet, attentive, and understated, as those with real power don't need to fight to be heard, as they know that, in the end, the decision lies with them anyway. Well, if you've made it this far, firstly, thank you for watching, but if you could now give the video a like, possibly even leave a comment and click on that subscribe button, it will encourage that mysterious algorithm to do its thing.